Thanks to Field Agent Canada for sponsoring this episode. We'll be talking about one of their solutions called ratings and reviews in the middle of this podcast. Stay tuned.
Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Benucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
That stuff we were talking about fishing and ponds and rivers and creeks. Holy shit, man. Like you missed the entire podcast.
Oh, all right. Well, that's all, folks.
Oh my God, Chang. Jeez Louise.
And I don't remember any of it.
What's the problem? I couldn't repeat that if my life depended on it. I don't remember what the hell we talked about. I know we went fishing somewhere.
Yeah, there you go.
So for the listeners, we have Bryan Horsley on. He's got a pretty interesting background. We thought we'd bring him on because one, he has a very unique retailer's point of view, and then also a wealth of experience in consulting and finance. And he's a fractional CFO. And I think for folks that don't really understand what that means, this is kind of a well-established segment that I think is going to continue to grow because people are going to need expertise and they can't always afford to pay for kind of full-time hours. And sometimes, quite frankly, a lot of our listeners probably don't need something like that full-time. But we thought we'd bring Bryan on so we can learn a little bit more about him. And then I do think this is, kind of part of our network that we think is, someone that's worthwhile knowing, right? So when you need the expertise, you've got someone around that you can be able to call.
Right.
Okay? So Bryan, welcome on.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you. Do you want to just introduce yourself? Tell the folks
history.
The next 45 minutes is yours. So you kind of go where you want to go, but would love to kind of hear where you came from, where you were, and then where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. History has been a bit two tracks at the same time. I spent about 13 years. I'm a CA or CPA. I spent 13 years at Ernst & Young, working with everything from like early stage startups to the multi-billion-dollar tech companies. The fun ones were the smaller growing brands, not so much the $10 billion companies. But at the same time, or partway through that, I co-founded Switch Grocery, which is an online retailer in the food space, focusing on like specialty niche food products, keto, paleo, stuff like that, which is where obviously I met you guys because you came in and helped us. And for Switch, I did everything from obviously the finance to supply chain, learned how to pack orders, learned how to get food from the US into Canada, learned that it's very difficult to get food from Canada to the US, started a US subsidiary, shut down a US subsidiary. So did Switch for about 7 years. And then when I left EY 2 years ago, also added the fractional CFO finance consulting, where I focused on kind of M&A, raising money, growing brands, growing companies that needed finance help. Because like you said, Phil, not all companies need a full-time. And you typically see up to, call it 15 to 20 million of revenue. They don't need full-time.
Right.
But they need something. And that's where, for the last couple of years, my sweet spot has been. Those companies that don't need a full-time, like 40 plus hours a week in the office, but they need that sometimes higher level finance help.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's me.
It's very cool. It's
very cool.
So why the move? So you were, when you were doing the consulting job, and then the move to fractional is interesting. Did you ever?
I was going to ask the same thing. Like, what precipitated that? Like, because
there was a couple different things when I left Ernst & Young. One of them was, to be honest, I had a kid, and I liked the idea of being around a bit more. I used to travel a lot. I used to be all over the world. So part of that, and part of it was, the other part was, at that time, Switch Grocery, like, it was 2021. Think about what e-com retail was doing in 2021. We were growing really fast. 6-7 times revenue in a year, and so there was a lot there. So part of that was leaving to really focus on, at the time, how we could continue growing that, how we could get that to be profitable, working with the team. My job was coming in, and I was always managing customer experience and the supply chain, but it was kind of manage it in my spare time. And this was, let's clean that up, let's get that going, and then over time bringing the time commitment down to add in the working with other companies and the fraction consulting, because I've always liked working with different companies and learning different things. And
yeah, it's kind of cool, right?
Kind of the beauty of our worlds, right? Is the fact that
it is fun.
In a week you can do 5 different things, right? With 5 different companies potentially, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's always the part when I was at EY that I liked the best.
Yeah.
Okay, I need a break. Okay, let's go to this one and do something completely different.
Right. Right.
So,
when you were there, I mean, obviously you've got Switch and kind of specialty food, but were there other industries that were kind of interesting to you?
So for a long time, I did any of our higher risk, newer stuff. So when cannabis was legalized, I did every EY client. I worked on those.
Oh, cool.
So I got to see a lot of a very new emerging market that was at times very interesting.
I'll say interesting is probably the word you're looking for.
Yep. Yeah.
That
time, very interesting, very entertaining.
Yep.
And so that was always fun, but because you never knew what was going to come next. So that was a fun couple of years of getting into those, and
it's kind of cool. Like, I know it's not the same. Like, when my wife was doing audit at the beginning, right? Kathy is a chartered accountant. In her audit days, she gets to some really weird. Because I remember one time she was auditing a brick, like a quarry and a brick making company, and I was like, "What? That's." And she's like, "I don't understand this thing at all." I'm like, who cares? That's
fascinating, though. I think it's interesting.
What do you make bricks? Brown colored, colored. Like what?
Up in Muskoka, there's a ton of them. There's a ton of quarries up in Muskoka. I worked with some, and it was interesting because one of them there makes the only PGA quality, or one of the only PGA quality sands for golf courses, and so it's little things like that were always really interesting.
I think that stuff's cool. That's the cool stuff that we get to do with, right?
Yeah.
PGA quality sand.
Yeah. I didn't know. I golf, but I didn't know how different all of that is.
Yeah, I didn't.
But it is, and there's companies that's what they do.
It's a thing. That's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That was always really interesting, and even now working with the different companies, just like you guys, and whether it's in food or not, you learn a lot, and you see a lot of very different things that maybe if I was just doing Switch or I was just doing EY, I never would have seen.
Right. Mm-hmm. Do you notice though a lot of similarities in things too, though? Like, is there certain things that sort of transcend?
There is
in industries.
In finance, a lot of companies always want specialized. You must be in this industry in finance, but other than some regulatory banking stuff like that, there's a lot that translates. Yes, you might need talking about the quarries. There's very specific things, but it's not insurmountable. But most of it is you're looking at the same things. You're looking at your margin. You're looking at at the end of the day, you're looking at cash.
Yeah, but it's almost like revenues, expenses, cash flow, profits.
Yep. Yep. And you might be financing it differently. You might be
Right.
all of that. But at the end of the day, a lot of finance is transferable because you're not the people on the ground building whatever widget, or even in sales, you're not out in the market trying to sell this on its specific attributes. It's okay, I need to manage this, I need to control costs, I need to raise money so we can grow, I need to do all these things. Or if we're going through a sale, I need to get through the sale and make sure that gets through. It's not, I need specialized knowledge of this food or something like that.
Right.
So there is a lot that's transferable, like I said, unless you're going into like banking or something like that.
When you talk switch though, so you said it was 7 years running, and then you sort of came in harder in the last 2. So on the front 7, were you involved? Because we know the story with your wife to get this going. And
I was, but in a much smaller capacity, because I had a full-time job. But I still managed our finance. But because I didn't focus on it as much, I wasn't able to figure out the ways to grow the company.
Right.
Like the first time that we took money was when I was on leave when my son was born.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was we were starting to grow. We were starting to get some new products in that we were seeing significant growth. Okay, how do we fund it? And it was that time that because I was off, I had the time to look into it and found some additional sources of funding. And we went between January and July of that year, our monthly revenue, I think, grew 5 times.
Wow.
Which needed a lot of cash, because that was a lot of inventory.
Yeah.
Right. But so once I took some time off and was able to dedicate that, because like Neha, my wife running it, she was focused on the marketing and growing it that way. It took me coming in and having some time and just having some excess capacity to identify the different ways that we could, once we had that, fund the growth and not be constrained just by whatever was coming in.
Yeah.
When we had that opportunity, because I said 2020, 2021, everyone was online.
Right.
So we capitalized on that.
And it's a tough business because you're truly buy sell, right? Like, and I think people don't really sometimes understand that about retail in general. In fact, even the partners that we had in the grocery store, like, you have to hold inventory in order to sell the inventory.
Yeah.
Right. You can't. It's not a just in time, or just not in time. Just wait for it to come in. Give me a week. Like, you need to finance stuff, right? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, because I think we do get a lot of listeners that maybe not specifically be in retail, but even within product, right? You have to buy bags. You have to buy boxes. You have to buy labels. You have to buy raw ingredients. You have to hold these things. And at that point, you are tying up, pretty key commodity cash, and you are waiting for sales, and then you're waiting for someone to pay you for said sales.
Yep.
Right. So I'm just trying to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you came from before, but it's not complicated, but it's got to be like, shit, man.
It's not complicated, but it is in that you don't really realize how long at the beginning. You don't realize how long your sales cycle is. It's okay. Right. I place an order. Okay, great. They give me net 30. Well, oops, it takes 15, 17 days to get to me. I'm not going to turn around this order in 10 days, 15 days. I'm not going to sell the whole thing. So you need to be able to finance all of that inventory, and you want enough inventory so you're not running out every time.
Right.
So you need to be able to finance that inventory in some way. And that either comes out of your profits or you start borrowing to get it. And then there's also all the other stuff that comes along with running a business. Like using Switch, we had a warehouse. Got to pay that every month. We are an online retailer. Shipping is expensive. Got to pay shipping. You want a website? that also isn't always cheap. You want all your marketing. So
yeah. Sorry, and Brian, I didn't mean. I think the other part in there to me that I don't know what brands really appreciate, like, because even when you say those things, I hear at least two different kind of splits in that process, right? Because there's one part that kind of tracks, because you say finance, people go, oh, they're the ones with the checkbook, right?
Right.
But the truth is that's not true. You have a set of folks who kind of keep track of the money, like bookkeepers and folks like that kind of go, here's the bucket. The bucket moved here and it moved there and it moved back, it moved forth, it moved here are all the other buckets left. But then the part I feel like that I think I'd love your perspective on is what we're like, that's really crucial because you need to know where all the buckets are. But then the other part is having someone strategic who can look at it and go, listen, this bucket costs more than this bucket. So the way you run your business, you got to keep things out of this bucket versus that bucket, right? Like, those are things that I think, quite frankly, day to day, you probably don't have enough time to look at all, right?
No, a lot. So you're right. There's two pieces to finance. There's the it's simplified, but the bookkeeping.
Yeah.
There's the compliance aspect of it, which is make sure your monthly or quarterly or whatever cycle you're on, numbers are updated. Make sure your tax filings, make sure all of that stuff, and that is very important, and that takes a long time. And I typically use there's some cloud bookkeeping firms that I use there, and then there's the strategic piece on top, which is where does our financing come from, which is looking at what our numbers actually mean. Where are we spending? Where can we improve our margin and cut down expenses? Okay, there's this new opportunity. How are we going to pay for that new opportunity? Like for Switch Grocery, it was, hey, there's this new brand. I need to fund a pallet's worth of product. This is new, it's additive. Mm-hmm. Where does the funding come from?
Yeah.
How do we pay for that?
Yeah.
And it's funny with Switch Grocery, both my wife and I are both CAs. But even then, until we made the concerted effort to give ourselves space to pull ourselves out, we still got caught up in it was why we brought you guys in, because you have your own business. Sometimes we had blinders too.
You get blind.
Yeah. It was our business. We thought we knew everything because that was everything. Like, we spent every day on it. And it was you guys coming in that forced some uncomfortable conversations.
But we love you guys, right?
Well, but it needed to happen.
But I think that's why you have those conversations, because we actually do like you guys.
Thinking, we love Brian and Nate.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah.
But Brian, let me ask you something, just because we're sort of on this. So, and I'll tell you, I'm going to word it this way, and you're the CPA, and so's Phil's wife, and so's mine. So I've got accountant, and your wife too. So there's accountants everywhere. So I'm going to get it wrong, and I don't care. Just clear it up for me. But I do find
Kathy, Neha, Amelia. Just keep in mind Kenny's asking the question.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's not even, it could be a question and a comment at the same time. I think sometimes, and maybe you guys got trapped into this too, even being accountants, there seems to be a tendency that how you manage your business is by the bank account at the end of the month. Yes. And you're not understanding what that means versus when someone says cash flow.
Yep.
Or if someone talks about operating money, or whatever it is. And I know, trust me, I've come from this where it is literally, you know what? There's $10,000 left in the bank. We must have made 10 grand.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality. And all that nuts. Okay. I know, let's say it's a coffee bar. I know my payroll's going to be 5 grand. My rent's 3 grand, blah, 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 blah. I got 10 grand in the bank. I should be able to get through this month. And the end of the month, you got 10 grand in the bank again. And you're thinking, fuck, I made 10 grand.
Yep.
Right. Pretty clear.
Yep. So, and you're right. So a lot of companies do manage it by the bank account, and that's not at a certain stage, that's not a bad thing, because at least they're watching it.
Yeah.
Or they're watching something.
They're watching something. There's a whole other subset of companies that don't.
Right.
And so at least that's something. At least they're watching cash. Like some larger companies get in trouble because they watch like EBITDA or something, which is
Nice.
an accounting thing, and it's nice, but it doesn't mean that you have cash at the end of the day.
Actually,
yeah.
It does at some point, but
it does.
not
Well,
every
it can
day
at some point, because a lot of times we talk about when we're getting ready for a sale or something.
Yes.
Ethereal. So
But-
in week 2 of your business, EBITDA is really, it's nice.
Right.
Maybe not the most important thing to focus on right at that particular moment.
Exactly. So if you're already looking at the bank, at least that's better. But where we did get in trouble, because we both thought, oh, we know what we're doing, we don't have to. It was once we started actually, and it's another step, but forecasting out cash.
Right.
And most of my clients, I do bi-weekly or monthly cash forecasts.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. You might be profitable, but oops, you have this big payment,
Right.
and if it doesn't all line up, it doesn't matter. So it's great that you're watching cash, but you need to be also looking out to see, okay, are we actually making money? Like in your example, if you always have 10 grand, great, you're break even. But what if you want to do something different? What if you are just, oops, I forgot to pay X?
I think that's what I'm trying to pull out of you, because I think what people don't understand is what you first said is you got 10 grand in the bank, right? And you might have $20,000 in receivables coming in. So cash coming into the company at some point.
Yeah.
But to what you just said, you could also have a payable of $35,000.
Yep.
Or let's say 30, go 30. So 10 grand in the bank, 20 grand in receivables, you should be able to cover.
Yep.
But my payables due now.
Yep. And that's exactly the problem. People get into cash crunches. I've had clients back when I was EY, like large companies just say, we're not paying you for 120 days.
But big companies can do that.
But they do that to small companies.
I get it.
So it puts the small company in a very tough position where if all you're doing, you're right. If all you're doing is watching the one number in your bank account, you might get into trouble because you'll get a call from X, whatever supplier, saying, pay me today, or you're not getting the items you need tomorrow.
Right.
And then
to fuel the receivables that you want to have.
Fuel the receivables, to fuel your ongoing business, because there's just a cash that needs to keep coming in and feeding it and feeding the business to keep, like, it costs money just to stay kind of stagnant. So you need cash coming in just to pay your payroll, to pay your rent, to pay your all that. So if you get in that cash crunch where you can't order your next round of whatever items you're selling, it is a problem, which is why I almost, like, I look at accounting income, but my most important is cash flow forecasting, is looking out 2 weeks, a month, and then get better and get 6 months out. And that's what I always look at of the health of the business.
So do me a favor, just keep it really simple, because I think this is one of the fundamental problems that most small businesses get themselves into. I do call it's literally bank account managing.
Yeah.
And I think this is why I get really concerned with it, is because of what you're suggesting. So maybe on just a really small scale, someone who's doing 20 grand a month in sales, there's 5 grand in the bank, when you say a cash forecast, what do you think this person's going to do? What are you asking them to look at? Or I don't know, whatever that means.
It's really looking at, it's a basic one is your cash position, like cash coming in, meaning sales.
Yeah.
You have to kind of estimate when your receivables are coming in. Cash going out, meaning any payables.
You need to understand this. Just because you sold it doesn't mean you have the cash,
everything.
Right? There's no cash yet. When is the cash coming?
Yeah. And then you look at the timing of that, and then there's all your other stuff, payroll. But where companies usually forget is you have to look out a little bit, because okay, I've got this big order coming, or I've got this big cash outflow coming, or there's whatever's coming. And if you don't plan for that, then you can get into trouble. So like a really basic one is just your cash, timing of cash, the cash coming in, timing of cash going out, and see what the end result is, and do that every month so that you're not caught by surprise when something comes. Because I've seen a lot of break even or profitable businesses get into a lot of trouble because there was something that they knew but they didn't plan for. Or they miss out on a growth opportunity because they didn't plan for it and they have no way of getting cash to finance it.
So like retail would be a classic. You ran online. So for example, one thing you can plan for, because it's going to come every December 25th, is Christmas. Right.
Yep.
So your probably sales are going to be higher, which means your inventory needs to be higher. Are you ready for that sort of cash outlay, whatever that means? And I guess that's what I just want to make sure that now, whether that's retail or whether you're on the manufacturing side and you do energy bars and it's coming towards spring and summer when everybody's outside and maybe doing more, same thing. You've got some seasonality that's built into it that you should be foreseeing. But I'm not convinced a lot of times that people actually spend enough time even just doing sort of the knowns, never mind the unknowns.
No, I agree. A lot of the time it's okay, what did we do last month?
And we'll be right back.
Hey, Kenny.
Phil.
We just got a product listed back at a national or at a regional banner.
Oh God.
Yeah, I know. But the problem is we were out of stock for a while, and then when it got back in stock, it really didn't turn. But we've kind of gone back in, and the buyer's given us another chance. I know usually I'm the marketing guy, but shoes on the other foot. What do I do? Now's the time, right? Like, this is the final yards. We gotta, if you use the sports analogy, we're in the end zone.
Buddy, this is it. We need to drive more people to this specific retailer.
Right.
And we need more people to talk about our specific coffees in this specific retailer. And that's where I had a wicked conversation with Jeff Doucette at Field Agent Canada last week. And I shit you not, this thing that they're doing is so freaking cool. It hurts. If I wanted to do something this weekend, I could call them. We could hone in on the amount of stores or the specific stores that we want to talk to. Have these people that he's got 250,000 people. He'll hone it down to coffee drinkers aged 15 to 29 if we want. If they're in this field, they'll go to these specific stores. They're obligated to buy the coffee. And the obligation is to go home, try the product, and then they have to go on to the retailer's webpage and write a 30-word minimum review on whether they liked or disliked the coffee. Now, obviously, we're pretty confident in our coffee, so I'm okay that I'm pretty sure we're going to get positives. I'm not worried about that. But think of that. Right to the retailer, helping push their reviews, which they all want, we all want, because it is a great way, and legit reviews. So if we wanted to do this weekend, the probability of actually getting it done is so high, it hurts. We could actually have a 30, 40, 50, 100 sample, 200 done for Monday. And the cost is literally, it's going to be for us with our coffee retailing at, say, I think about 15 or 16 bucks in this place. We're going to be under $30 per review.
So if you want to check this out, go to www.fieldagentcanada.com/ratings and reviews.
Yeah.
Or just go to their site, fieldagentcanada.com, and then you can click on the services page, and it'll take you to that spot. So, or
just go to LinkedIn and just ping Jeff Doucette.
Or tell Jeff Doucette that the two knuckleheads sent you.
What's he going to do?
But that's it, right? Cool.
Awesome program.
And now back to the podcast.
Well, in food, we know summer low. Going into September, October, November, you start ramping up.
Yeah.
For us with Switch Grocery, December was always terrible because we sold health foods. No one wanted to buy healthy food.
No.
over the
Nobody's
holidays.
even watching money in December. It's just willy-nilly, right?
So we'd have a great November, and then December would just fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
So we have to plan for that. And then January for us, it was always the first 2 weeks of January were slow.
Yeah.
And then it started picking
right.
up right after that. So we had to plan for about a month, because the first week in December was always okay. About a month of probably a drop of about 60% from our normal monthly revenue in that period. So we had to plan for that. And it became really important because we do the ramp up of inventory for Black Friday. And then that all comes due in December, January.
Yeah, when your sales are or your revenue is
when our revenue is down.
So I guess my question to you is, when you say plan, what am I planning? Like, I'm trying to make sure that people really get this in their heads, because it's the fundamental fall apart.
Are you trying to get Bryan to do our budget for us?
Listen, our budget's going to be way more complicated than an hour podcast, because by the time you and I fiddle fart with the forecasting and the numbers, who knows where it's going to go?
Complicated because Bryan will look at our books and go,
exactly.
No,
And you and I are just going to want the numbers to read, but we want the numbers to read.
Yeah. What he's actually going to say.
And we're going to be saying, no, look at our numbers. We made it work. Figure it out.
Yeah, that's exactly what our wives would say anyway, right? That's
exactly.
why our wives are not doing it.
That's why they don't touch our books.
No.
Yeah. So when you talk about planning, it's looking at everything you've said. It's looking at, for all you Switch Grocery, we knew our sales were going to go up 30%. Because of Neha and I, we went further and okay, we know we're going to have this discount, all that. And because we were online, we got the cash 2 days later. We didn't have receivables, so we knew if we had these sales within X days, we'd have cash. So we would have to plan a little bit of, okay, what's our growth in sales going to be? What's our increase in sales? We got to the point in the last year, maybe a year and a half ago, where we said, okay, we'll give up some of it so that we don't get stuck on the back end with way too much inventory, because that happened to us in 2020, where we had this growth and we ordered a ton and we had a good Black Friday, but not
an amazing one.
Not like the Black Friday you had in August and May and June.
Right. So we were stuck with all this extra inventory. We had to get some short-term financing to carry it and then pay that back once our sales started. But we went too far. So what we do now is, okay, here's the growth that we want. Let's take it back a little bit. And here's where we're willing to just say, okay, this is as far as we can go, because I don't want to get caught with this massive bill at the end.
Right.
And so a lot of our planning and forecasting is coming up with where we think that's going to go. We know what it costs for us to get inventory. We know our approximate split of our sales. So we can kind of figure out what our expenses are going to be to buy it all. And then for us, because we controlled a lot of the timing and shipping, we would order as close as possible for us to Black Friday, so that we got the maximum amount of time on the back end to pay it. But a lot of the planning is, what do you think my sales are going to be? It's always hard. And what do I need to fund those sales? What inventory do I need to meet those sales? And then plan for that. And when you have those spikes, whether it's Black Friday, Christmas, whether you're a brand like some type of summer sports brand that sees all their sales in April, May, planning for that spike while not going too far on or over ordering and have too much working capital.
Yeah, you play a more conservative game.
Yeah.
Because I guess in your head is better to, it sounds terrible to say, I'd rather run out when it's my money rather than carry too far. But because of your accounts, I'm assuming when you're doing this, you're also looking at your sales forecast, how much money I need to do this. Then you're looking at if the receivables are long, which in your case they're not, and then you have to match that against payables.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, okay, if it comes in on November 22nd, let's say 3 days before Black Friday, and that year's on the 25th for whatever reason, it comes in, I know I can get cash pretty quickly, and I know I don't have to pay this in 30 days.
Yeah.
So I've got some time.
If you can
to
throw it on a credit
sell,
card, you buy yourself even more time.
even a little more time, and probably some points too.
Yeah.
As long as you pay it, otherwise you just buy yourself 18 or 21% interest.
Which is now the cost, even borrowing from BDC and stuff. So, and others.
Right, but you don't. Again, but it's all that needs to be in your head. And again, it's not a doom and gloom thing. It's really understanding the reality of the world we're in. You have to be.
But it could be doom and gloom.
Well, I mean, you could bankrupt
right?
yourself, literally.
Especially with this
100%.
NBC thing that, like
December 31st, babies. January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, gonna be very interesting days.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be, a lot of companies are struggling to come up with the whatever $40,000 they need.
Well, it wasn't a big deal at 2%. And at 11, 12, 13, all of a sudden, shit.
Yep.
It's a lot of money.
Become a big deal.
And it's a lot of money. Like back when we were growing, we took money from BDC at 2%. It was a great deal. I see some stuff now for some other clients where BDC is offering that, like the $100,000 that every company can get, at low to mid teens, 12, 13, 14% interest.
That's a big difference.
That's $13,000, $14,000 in interest a year on top of your $20,000 repayment.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
I think that's what people don't understand, Brian. I think to what we're getting at is that, there's a lot of 40, 50, $100,000, $200,000 loans that was free money.
Yeah.
Until December 31st.
Yeah.
And then she no free no more.
Yeah. And it's going to be tough for a lot of businesses.
Right. So if you didn't plan for that, back to what we're sort of getting at, again, you can end up, to Phil's point, in a true doom and gloom where, how are you going to do it?
Well, and that's it. Like all the, or at least most of the big six banks are all saying they're going to put out programs to help companies refinance.
Sure.
But it's going to be refinance. Well, it's going to be refinance at market.
Well,
it's not going to be refinance at the rates. Exactly.
No. And to refinance is still, I'm refinancing at new rates, and I'm going to be now paying, maybe not in 3 years, they'll give me 7, which is lovely, until you start looking at your principal versus interest and you're thinking, like, shit, when's this done?
And the other challenge you're going to have is, and I don't know, but my guess is they're going to ask for personal guarantees.
100%. Oh, 100%.
The government's guaranteed it now, but if the banks take it on, you're going to personally guarantee that.
100%. Well, so I think the government's figured out. I think they've run out of money. I mean, that printing press was running a mile a minute.
Yeah, I think it's gone on long enough. It would have been nice to push it out another year, but
not possible.
No, I agree.
So
yeah, it is like the planning for those things. It's important. It's not easy because it forces you to sit down and think about things and plan for it and spend the time. And we all know founders time is one thing that they don't have a lot of.
Or they don't seem to choose to put into that side. And we're all guilty of that. I've got failed things too.
Absolutely.
So I get it. And they failed because of the exact same things we're talking about. And it's worse when you actually know it. You know what I mean? Like
that's what bothered Neha and I so much.
Well, you should. You guys are both
Swift.
accountants. Like I'm the same thing. I got an accountant in the house. You're thinking, like, seriously, what's with you people?
Yep. But it's a lot more. It seems a lot more important to spend it on the other things.
Exactly.
Until it's not. Until it's too late.
The other thing, the other things are doing things, right? And this one is. Honestly, it's a thinking thing first, right?
Yeah.
Like it really is. It's a thinking thing first. So if you're not thinking about it, then all of a sudden doing it really isn't. You know what I mean? Like if I don't ship it, people are going to yell at me, right? But bank account in the background,
I can't pay for
it'll
it.
be fine, right?
Other people are going to yell at me,
right? It'll be fine, right? And then if somebody threatens to turn something off, it'll be fine. I'll pay for it then. It'll be fine.
There's the dopamine hit of I did things, I shipped that order, I got that email out, I whatever.
Well, what feels better than selling? Like, really?
Exactly.
Like what feel like if so
replenishment, Kenny.
No, selling feels like phenomenal. So you know what I do? You just chase sales all day because that's fun shit.
Yep.
Looking
For
at
us,
a
it
stupid
was
number is
see what
boring
number
as hell.
see what number we can get up to in Shopify every day. And
Absolutely. That's the juice, man. That's what drive. Who cares about the rest of it until you have to care about the rest of it? And I think that's what we're always trying to press upon people. I mean, we just all three of us came off the CHFA, and Phil and I talked about it ad nauseum for 2 full days during the show and a couple of days after the show. Is, when you're talking to founders and new companies, and the ideas are really cool, and the products are quite nice, but they've spent the vast majority of their time on product design and ingredients, which are all critical. I'm not knocking that, but they spent very, very, very little time on the financing of it.
Yeah.
Whether it was the marketing and or the raw ingredients or whatever it is, cash flow. Like, how are you going to do this? Let's say you do get an order from Walmart or a Loblaws, a superstore, and it's super exciting, but how are you doing it? Are you ready?
Can you afford it?
I don't know. I mean, you can go because you can borrow against the house. You can, and typically people do. They borrow against the house, friends, family, whatever. But are you ready to actually do this?
And the other part a lot of the time they haven't figured out, and we've talked about that, is the pricing. Do they have the right pricing in place?
Yeah, so do you have enough margin to play it?
At the end of the day, when you've sold to the Walmart or the whoever, is there anything left?
Right.
And that was something we got in trouble with Switch years ago. At that time, we had a small space. We fulfilled ourselves, or had a part-time employee. We, even in Toronto, we drive and drop it off. And then as we grew, that pricing, which was great when we did it all ourselves, didn't pay for the Health Canada certified warehouse and the shipping all over the country.
Or the courier that you didn't have to use because you were the courier.
Yep. Or we
didn't want to work for free like you did, right?
And that's it. So we got in trouble and we had to increase prices, and you could never increase them enough to compensate. But a lot of the early stage brands, they don't have those things. They haven't thought about those things.
Well, I don't think they know. The unfortunate part is, and sometimes we don't do a great job as an industry of educating each other. And a lot of times, because if you don't ask the question, I just assume you know.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why we try to do what we do.
Though, eh? Like, it makes me so sad to kind of tell them, even the conversations we have around placement.
Oh, geez,
right?
Press on all of it,
right? Because they think they work so hard at this stuff, and you realize, like, guys, you're not
kind of missed the key part.
Yeah, you're not done yet. Like, you gotta get this part right. Otherwise, it really is gonna suck, right? Like,
because all your forecasting was done in a fantasy world. You're thinking, I get what you're trying to do, but I ain't gonna sell over there.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the products, like, I love the food, I love the products.
Oh, so do I.
It's just sometimes the correct price just might not be the right one for them, and it's really tough.
It is tough.
And that goes for all, whether it's food or anything else. Food is I think food's a little bit tougher, or a lot, than other markets on pricing, because I don't know about you guys, but I pay attention to what we spend on food.
Well, we do too, because
we spend on food.
Well, because we buy it every day, right? It's just what it is. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a classic example from a large scale. What's the truck company, the electric truck starts on an R?
Rivian.
Yeah. I couldn't remember that. I was going to say Rivian. So Rivian, I think, is, and I don't think just figuring it out, but I'm going to say just figuring it because it irritates the shit out of me. Just figuring out that it basically, they're losing about $33,000 for every truck they make.
Yeah.
Right. So you're kind of, I read that today. I'm thinking, fuck, that might have been one of those things you might want to look at sort of the beginning of the process, because I get, I mean, it's a cool vehicle. Electric's hot. Yay, team. I get all that stuff. But how long can you sustain 33 grand a vehicle loss?
Yeah, man, does that suck? It sucks so much. Like,
and that's
the heck?
And that's 33 just to get to break even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not making any money yet.
No. We haven't done anything. I mean, how do you sustain? And the thing is, again, I don't think people will look at, like, all of us will look at that and think, oh, yeah, I get that. Oh, look at that. I was so stupid. And then what do? We go do the exact same thing. Yep. Now, it's not $33,000 per unit. It might be 33 cents a bar. But it's a loss.
Same.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
Same, right? Like,
yeah, but why don't we see it same? And all of it comes into play, like you and I were talking, the placement, the pricing, how you promote it. Like, you have money to just, like, you guys were online, so you knew you had to dump a lot of money into online ads for the most part. And I'm sure you probably found it, maybe you didn't have to do as much as you did or whatever, but that money's got to come from somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, and we spent a lot of money on online ads for a long time until we started cutting back and realized our revenue didn't change. And that was a huge drain on cash for a long time.
Right.
And
that one hurts. That one hurts a lot.
It does.
It does hurt.
Well, and then you know,
learning.
you think of the assumptions that you make along the way, you know, that managing by bank account, and then like, or when, do you remember, I think we were still working together when Facebook changed their algorithm, right?
Yeah,
and then
I think we just started
had a certain level
I think
of
we
ads,
just started
it was
that.
generating revenue, and then they changed it and went, right? And you were like, right? And so you managed by bank account, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, like we didn't.
It was nothing you can control. That was an algorithm change. They did it for their reasons, but all these people like you guys who were riding it thought, oh,
yeah,
we didn't see that
revenue
coming.
dropped 20% pretty quickly from that. And we slowly got it back up, but we took a huge hit really quickly.
Well, you burn cash again because now that inventory, the payables coming due, and your receivables are down 20%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's got to hurt a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, there was a few months there that were very tight, or more than a few months. It took us a long time to kind of right size the company so that we were no longer had everything to support that bigger company. It was tough. It was really tough.
No, I bet.
And there's always going to, but the problem is, especially online, we are so reliant on others' platforms, systems.
Yeah.
Apple makes a change, Facebook makes a change, Google makes a change, and it doesn't matter that everything else is great. People just aren't seeing your business anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Can have catastrophic impacts.
And if you haven't, going back to it, you can never plan for that, but you need to plan for having positive, like having cash coming in and having positive cash. And otherwise, when that comes, and if you're only planning for break even, you won't be able to survive it.
If someone's small, Brian, whether it's a brand again or a retailer, would you, I mean, I because you've gone through it, it's kind of a loaded question, I guess, but do you sort of recommend or suggest that people have like an operating chunk of change? Like, I know how most people do. What they'll do is they'll go to the bank. This literally will happen, right? They'll go to the bank, borrow 20 grand to buy the packaging, the boxes. Let's say it's a bar, they make their bar or whatever, right? That's all they've got though. That's 20 grand is all they got. They're capped out, right? So now you're sitting on 20 grand. The sales come in, you sell 5,000 this month. You know, you're going to have to, you know, maybe reorder sooner or later, but the minimums might be 10 grand. So it means you have to wait 2 months. Like, would you recommend that you sort of always have, and I don't know how to do this, right? Because I know most people are tapped, but like you got to have something somewhere, no?
You have to have some excess, use the finance term, excess liquidity, excess available, because if you max yourself out quickly, we all know, when we just said, that's only the beginning. If you just spend it all on getting your first run done, well, you still need to do all the other stuff. And if you've burned it all on that, there's nothing left to take advantage of if something else comes along, or just give yourself that flexibility. And I'm always a proponent of, at the beginning especially, get something out that may not be all the way there. Maybe your packaging's not like Whole Foods quality. Maybe your website isn't professional, all of that. It's kind of, I've borrowed it from the software and tech companies that I work with, of getting a minimum viable product out. Get something out that is good, that you can start selling, that you can start trying to earn from. and then iterate and improve from there. Because
Right.
if you go all out at the beginning and it doesn't work, or there's something you've missed,
Yeah.
you don't have any backup.
Right.
You don't have any flexibility there. So I've always liked even with Switch Grocery, like our website, we never spent any money on it. It was all done, like even our current site, I think that's 4 or 5 years old. We had people saying, oh, hire this, spend $20,000, make this. But at the end of the day,
I guess if
worked.
it's working and generating revenue, is do I get the 20,000 back? And I think that's the part that people don't understand. Now, to what you said before, that means you don't make a shitty product. Don't scrimp. Don't cut the corners on the actual physical product. Maybe your packaging isn't 100% compostable now, and you want to get there. You need to get there.
Fine. Yeah.
Awesome. Do it. But understand that if you front load everything, you've left nothing. Like, let's say it doesn't move quickly. Let's say it takes 6 months to move. It still costs you money to hold this stuff, right?
Yep. Your money's still gone. If you've borrowed, you're still paying interest.
Right.
And the least you can spend to get it to that, the better. Like it's the going back to software. Like there's software companies out there that put out a product in a week. Yeah, okay, they're not the greatest, but at least they're doing something quick to see if there's a market.
Yep.
And then they're improving quickly.
And then they improve on it. And like I look at some of our best performing brands on Switch Grocery, if I look back at their original packaging, like it's nowhere near what it would be today, but they've had 5, 6, 7 years of growth and building it out and making it better. They made sure the product was good, but everything around that was 70, 80% there.
Yeah. So good, important, yay team, but not necessarily perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where, using your example of 20 grand, if you could spend 15 and get there versus 20 and get, you're still not going to get perfect, but get, instead of 80%, you're going to be 95. I'd spend the 15 and have that 5,000 as my backup, because there is going to be stuff that comes along, and then you're going to be scrambling or looking for debt that you don't want to take on, or expensive money, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think people need to appreciate that. It's why household debt runs amok, right? There was a stat in the States a little while ago that basically half the population could not afford a surprise $400 bill.
Yeah.
Half the population could not. And business is the same thing,
Isn't
right?
our Canadian number very similar?
It's probably going to be pretty damn close. And that's for personal, that's for living at home. So the hot water tank goes, you have to decide, do I eat? Do I not pay the bill? Do I pay the 21% on Visa? Like, where do I find this $400 or $1,000? But business can be the same. As let's say the sales are, let's say you had 3 flavors and one sells really well, but it's only 25% of your inventory. Like, it's the best seller, but you got nothing left in the tank to pop up. Now you got to burn through the shitty flavors, which aren't moving. Like, how do you know what I mean? Like, you got to think of these. Like, you got to put some negativity into it, for lack of a better word. It's not negativity; it's practicality. Like, you got to think.
Yeah.
That there could be some stuff that you think might be really well, but doesn't at the beginning. It may take a little time, but do you have the time?
I remember when we started Switch, all the things that we thought would do well didn't. The things that we just said, okay, yeah, fine, we'll list it, are what drove us.
It's funny. Yeah?
That's hilarious. Well, no, probably not so funny, but anyway.
You know what? I ultimately, I don't care. I learned.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. Our customers were not who I thought they were going to be. That's fine. We just pivoted and changed to that. But it is, at the beginning, what we thought was going to be the case was absolutely the opposite.
But you had two people financially savvy making those decisions, and you probably weren't going to shut down. Do that, like we said, if you had a $20,000 budget, you burned it all because you had this perfect product, which is great. And let's say nobody really wants it that badly out of the gate. It's going to sell. You got a good product. You're doing cool things. Take you a year. Now what?
Yeah. And that's the case with food. You don't always, most of the time, you don't immediately start selling. It takes time. It takes however you're going to do it. Going into stores, doing demos, social media.
All of it, actually.
Realistically, you need all of it.
Yeah, all of it.
It's going to take longer than you think. Whether even if you have an amazing product, it's going to take time, because food is also a very personal thing where people, like, I'm willing to try a lot of different things, especially because of Switch Grocery, and we tried everything, but a lot of people just like what they like.
Right.
And it takes time to see it, keep seeing it. Well, we had done, this was 2 years ago, but we had done some research that showed that it took someone seeing us eight times before they purchased on average.
Yeah,
It's a long time.
I think that's a marketing stat.
A long time.
Yeah.
Right.
And we had done a bit, and it came back consistent with the average stat. And so it's like, okay, you need to see us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Google, on YouTube, on email, on.
Then we go.
Yep. And then you'll come buy from us once. So it does take time, and you need to have some capacity built in to get you through that.
Right.
Because otherwise it's very difficult to, then you're really scrambling, and you're really putting yourself potentially in a difficult financial position.
Yeah. And then it's all the stress and anxiety and shit that goes with it.
And starting a business already has that. So
yeah, you got enough of it for sure.
Try not to add even more.
Yeah.
We have run out of time, young man.
It was great.
I really appreciate you coming. And then we would love to talk to you more. I feel like as the year kind of winds down.
Well, I think sometime in January would be interesting to get your take. And maybe even it's some of the help that you could, without giving advice, but because you got to watch your professions and how you do things, but just giving people it's going to be tough, but here's some things you can do. These are some tricks, for lack of a better, that,
There's a lot of great stuff out there. Like, a lot of companies don't take advantage of government grants. There's a lot of other things that people can do to get help that they just don't. They don't have the time.
Yeah, but the problem is that by the time they need the help, they've got the time. It's just, it might be just a little on the too far gone side, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Which we don't want. We want people to be successful and do this, but.
Yep. No, that was great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think for the audience, so we'll get Bryan to leave his details in a sec. Sorry, the dog is wandering into the conversation. But if you have questions too, I think maybe shoot us a note at podcast@thiscommercelife.com.
Yeah.
And then we'll compile a set of FA, like frequently asked questions, and you can come back on and answer them.
You do those for January. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And in the short term, if somebody's not quite near panic, but getting close, if they wanted to bug you or ask you some questions, how would they find you?
Right now, the easiest way is just LinkedIn. Go ahead and message me there. Or my email is just my first name, Bryan, at bryanhorsley.cpa.
And Horsley, HORSLEY.
Yep. .cpa.
Cool.
Yeah. So go ahead and message me there.
No, I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bryan.
Thank you, sir. We actually do. Yeah. Thanks for taking a Monday afternoon too. I'm sure it's almost dinner time for you guys. We're on a stat out here, so we're not working today.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You guys, Ontario, guys just don't understand, appreciate how many stats you could have in a year if you just took advantage of them all.
Great. Thanks, Kenny.
Oh, I had to throw that in there, buddy. Bryan, go enjoy your afternoon. Thanks again.
I'm going to go make dinner for the kid.
Go make dinner. Phil, you stick around. Bryan, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Cool.
Take care, buddy. Thanks again, eh?
Bye.
Appreciate it. Where'd you go, Chang? Okay, everybody, just so you know, we're probably going to sign off. I'll thank you all for listening. We've lost Chang. I don't know where he went. I'm assuming Sophie's been barking a mile a minute. So he's gone to take care of the dog. Well, Chang is back. I already
And
thanked
back.
everybody for listening. I told them that Sophie was probably barking, so you had to take care of the
Yeah.
dog.
This is her. She's being a pain in the ass.
That's okay. That's what she's good at too, once in a while, right?
Let's stop this recording.
Thanks, everybody.